The message wasn't meant to hurt me, at least that's what I told myself at first. But when she said it, so casually, like she was reminding me of the weather, something inside my chest didn't just crack, it shifted. It was 10 days ago. 10 days! 10 days since my son opened the brewery he'd been dreaming about for years. And I hadn't even known it happened. I remember staring at my phone, waiting for the rest of the message to load, waiting for the real explanation. Something like, "Oh, we thought you knew," or "There must have been a mistake." But nothing came. Just that one sentence, sitting there like it had always belonged. My name is Farouk, and I wasn't always this kind of father. The kind who finds out about his son's biggest moment through a passing comment from his daughter-in-law. No, once upon a time I was everything to him. Or at least I thought I was. My son, Ayan, used to follow me everywhere when he was little. I still remember how his tiny hand would wrap around my finger as we walked through the old market streets. He never liked crowds, so he'd stay close, pressing into my side like I was the only safe place in the world. "Baba, don't let go," he used to say. And I never did. Not when he fell off his first bicycle. Not when he failed his exams in college. Not even when he came to me one evening, nervous and quiet, and told me he wanted to quit his stable job to start something risky. "A brewery, Baba," he said, avoiding my eyes. I know it sounds strange. Strange wasn't the word I would have chosen. Risky, uncertain, maybe even foolish. But I didn't say any of that, because I saw the way his hands trembled, not from fear of failure, but from fear of me. So I did what I had always done. I stood by him. "If this is what you believe in," I told him, placing my hand on his shoulder, "then I believe in it too." That night he hugged me tighter than he had in years, and for a moment, I felt like I hadn't lost my little boy after all. The next few years weren't easy. He poured everything into that dream, his savings, his time, his sleep. And when that wasn't enough, I quietly filled in the gaps. I sold a piece of land I had been saving for retirement. I never told him, not because I wanted credit, but because I didn't want him to feel the weight of it. He needed to believe he could stand on his own, and I needed to believe I was still part of his foundation. Then came Zara, his wife. At first I liked her. She was confident, well-spoken, and had a way of organizing things that Ayan never could. Where he was impulsive, she was calculated. Where he dreamed, she planned. I thought maybe she was exactly what he needed, and in the beginning she treated me with warmth. "Uncle, you must come over for dinner," she'd say, smiling brightly. "Ayan always tells me how much you've done for him." Those words meant more to me than I let on, because somewhere deep inside, I needed to know he still talked about me when I wasn't around. But slowly, things began to change. It wasn't sudden, not enough to notice right away. Just small things. Phone calls that became shorter, visits that became less frequent, conversations that felt rehearsed. And then one day, I realized something strange. Whenever I asked Ayan a question about the brewery, he would glance at Zara before answering. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then I started noticing the pauses, the way his tone shifted, like he was choosing words carefully, like he wasn't just speaking to me anymore. Still, I pushed those thoughts aside. Because doubt has a way of poisoning even the strongest relationships, and I refused to let that happen. A few months ago, he told me they had finally secured a location, a small but beautiful place near the edge of the city. I remember the excitement in his voice. "Baba, you have to see it," he said. And I did. I went with him that very weekend. The place smelled of fresh wood and paint, and sunlight poured in through the tall windows. It wasn't finished yet, but I could see the vision. His vision. I stood there, watching him explain every detail, every plan, every dream, and my chest filled with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Pure, overwhelming pride. "You did it," I whispered almost to myself. He smiled, but before he could say anything, Zara stepped in. "We still have a long way to go," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Let's not celebrate too early." Something about the way she said it made the moment feel smaller. Like a candle being snuffed out just as it began to glow. After that day, things moved quickly. Too quickly. I'd hear updates less and less directly from Ayan, and more through others. A neighbor mentioning construction progress. A distant relative talking about investors. Even a shopkeeper once said, "Your son's place is looking impressive." And each time, I would smile and nod, pretending I already knew. Until yesterday. Yesterday was when I finally decided to ask him directly. It had been weeks since we last spoke properly. So I called him. The phone rang longer than usual. And when it was finally answered, it wasn't him. It was Zara. "Hello?" she said. Her tone was polite, but distant. "Oh, Zara Beta," I said gently. "Is Ayan there? I just wanted to ask him something." "He's busy right now," she replied. "You can tell me." I hesitated, but then I thought, why not? "It's about the brewery," I said. "I was wondering, when is the opening?" "I'd really like to be there." There was a pause, a long one, long enough for my heart to start beating louder than the silence. And then she said it, so casually, so effortlessly. It was 10 days ago. I don't remember what I said after that, or if I said anything at all. All I remember is the sound of my own breathing, growing heavier, sharper, like the air had suddenly turned thin. 10 days! 10 days, and no one thought to tell me. Not my son. Not the boy who once held my hand like it was his entire world. That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, every conversation, every sign I had ignored, and for the first time, I allowed myself to ask a question I had been avoiding for months. Was I being pushed out? Slowly, deliberately, without even realizing it? This morning, I made a decision. I put on my coat, picked up my keys, and drove to the brewery, because I needed to see it with my own eyes, not as a father invited to celebrate, but as a stranger, trying to understand where he no longer belonged. As I stood outside, looking at the sign with my son's name on it, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. A banner, still hanging near the entrance, faded slightly, but still readable. "Grand opening celebration. Thank you for joining us." And beneath it, a photograph, a large framed photograph, placed right by the door. I stepped closer, my heart pounding, because in that picture, everyone was there. Family, friends, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years, all smiling, all celebrating, all present, everyone, except me. And just as I reached out, my fingers trembling, about to touch the edge of that frame, the door behind it slowly opened, and a familiar voice said, "Baba, what are you doing here?" For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I didn't turn around immediately. I just stood there, my fingers still hovering inches away from that photograph, as if touching it might somehow pull me into a moment I was never allowed to be part of. "Baba, what are you doing here?" Ayan's voice sounded the same, familiar, warm, and yet there was something underneath it now, something cautious, something guarded. I slowly lowered my hand and turned to face him. For a second, I saw the boy he used to be, the same eyes, the same face that once looked at me like I was his entire world. But then I noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders stiffened slightly, like he was bracing for something. "I could ask you the same thing," I said quietly. My voice didn't come out angry. It came out tired. His eyes flickered. Confusion first, then understanding, then something else, something he tried to hide. "Baba, he started, but stopped midway, because we both knew what this was about. "You opened it," I said, glancing past him into the brewery. "It looks beautiful." And it did. Soft golden lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over polished wooden tables. The bar was neatly arranged, bottles lined up like quiet witnesses. There was laughter somewhere in the back. Customers, maybe. A dream fully alive, and I had missed its first breath. "You should have told me," I added. There it was, not an accusation, just a truth, finally spoken out loud. Ayan ran a hand through his hair, a habit he'd had since he was young whenever he felt cornered. "It was last minute," he said. "Things got hectic and—" "10 days?" I interrupted gently. Not sharply, not loudly, just enough to stop the lie before it could grow. His eyes dropped. And in that silence, I felt something break that couldn't be put back together. "I didn't even know it happened," I continued. "I had to hear it from Zara." At the mention of her name, his posture shifted. Subtle, but clear, like a line had been drawn somewhere I couldn't see. But he could. "She handles most of the communication," he said almost automatically. I studied his face. The words didn't sound like his. They sounded practiced. Does she handle who gets invited too? I asked softly. That question landed differently. He looked up this time, straight at me, and for a brief second, just a second, I saw guilt, real undeniable guilt. But then, Ayan? Her voice. Zara stepped into view from inside the brewery, perfectly composed, as always. Her eyes moved from him, to me, and in that instant I watched her expression change. Not surprise, not discomfort, just calculation. Uncle, she said, offering a small, polite smile. You came. Came. Not we were expecting you, not we missed you. Just came. Yes, I replied. I thought I should see it. She nodded, stepping closer to Ayan's side, not touching him, but close enough to remind him where he stood. It was a very busy event, she said smoothly. We had a limited guest list due to space constraints. You understand, of course. Limited. I almost smiled at that, because the photograph outside told a very different story. I see, I said. And I did, more clearly than ever before. Ayan shifted uncomfortably. Baba, it wasn't like that, he said quickly. We were going to tell you, but things just slipped? I finished for him. He nodded, too quickly. And that's when I realized something that hurt more than the exclusion itself. He wasn't fighting for me to understand. He was hoping I would stop asking. I was there when you came up with the idea, I said quietly. My voice wasn't shaking anymore. It had settled into something deeper, something steady. I was there when you thought it wouldn't work, when you almost gave up. He swallowed hard. I remember, he said. Do you? I asked. Because remembering isn't the same as honoring. Zara crossed her arms lightly. Not defensive, just firm. We're grateful for everything you've done, she said. But at some point, Ayan had to build this on his own, create his own identity, his own space. Her words were calm, carefully chosen, and on the surface, they even sounded reasonable. But underneath them, there was a quiet message. There's no place for you here anymore. I looked at Ayan, not her. Him, because in the end, this wasn't about Zara. It was about the boy who once held my hand and asked me not to let go. Is that how you feel? I asked. No anger, no pressure, just a simple question. He hesitated. And in that hesitation, I got my answer. I needed things to be different, he said finally. Different. Such a small word for something that felt so final. I nodded slowly. I understand, I said. And strangely, I did. Because life changes people. It reshapes priorities. It builds new loyalties. But what I didn't understand was how quietly I had been erased. I won't take much of your time, I added. I took one last look around the brewery, at the dream we had once shared, now standing without me. You've done well, I said. I'm proud of you. That part was still true. No matter how much it hurt, as I turned to leave, Ayan took a small step forward. Baba! I paused, but I didn't turn back, because I wasn't sure I could face him again, not without saying something I might regret. Take care of yourself, I said. And then I walked out. The evening air felt colder than it should have, or maybe it was just me. I reached my car, opened the door, and stopped, because something inside me refused to let this be the end. Not like this, not quietly, not without understanding why. So instead of getting in, I closed the door, turned around, and walked back toward the brewery. But this time, I didn't go to the front entrance. I moved along the side of the building, toward the back, toward the place where the staff usually entered. I don't know what I expected to find. Answers, maybe, or just something real, something unfiltered. As I got closer, I heard voices, familiar ones, Ayan and Zara. They hadn't seen me. I stopped. Not intentionally, but because their words held me in place. You should have handled that better, Zara was saying. Her voice was low, but sharp. I told you he would show up eventually. I didn't think he'd come today, Ayan replied. I thought, that's the problem, she cut in. You keep thinking instead of deciding. There was a pause. Then she continued. We agreed on this. No emotional complications. Not now. Not when everything is finally working. I know, he said, his voice quieter now. But he's my father, and this is your future, she replied firmly. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, final. I felt something inside me go still. Not break, not shatter. Just go still, like a door closing quietly. For the last time. Then Ayan spoke again. And what he said next made me realize this wasn't just about an opening I wasn't invited to. It was about something much deeper. Something I had never even considered. Maybe, he said slowly, maybe it's better if he stays out of it completely. I stepped back before I could hear anything else. Because I didn't need to. I had already heard enough. And as I walked away, into the quiet darkness of the street, I finally understood the truth I had been avoiding all along. I hadn't just missed the opening of his brewery, but what Ayan didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that I still carried something with me, something they had forgotten, something that could change everything. And as I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel, my reflection faint in the glass, I whispered to myself, maybe it's time they remember.